Imagine a world not shaped by the empires of Rome, Britain, or France, but by a single, thunderous force sweeping from the steppes of Central Asia, the Mongol Empire. In our history, the Mongols reached the gates of Europe, devastated kingdoms in Russia, Poland, and Hungary. And then they stopped. A twist of fate, the death of Ogedei Khan, halted their momentum, sending generals like Subutai and Batu Khan back to the Mongolian heartland. But what if that interruption never occurred? What if the Mongol tide had not receded but surged forward, consuming Europe entirely? The key divergence in our timeline is simple yet profound. Ogedei Khan does not die in 1241, or if he does, his death is delayed by a few crucial years. This means the Mongol campaign in Europe does not pause. Batu Khan and Subutai, emboldened by their victory at the Battle of Mohi against Hungary and Legnica against Poland, press deeper westward. France, the Holy Roman Empire, and even Italy brace for an enemy unlike any they've ever faced. The Mongol army at this point is unmatched in mobility, discipline, and psychological warfare. Their composite bows outrange and outfire European crossbows. Their use of relay stations, scouts, and feigned retreats confound lumbering European knights. Town after town falls, often without a fight. Paris burns by 1243. Rome surrenders after a brief siege, its pope executed or exiled to Mongol-occupied Constantinople. The Holy Roman Empire dissolves in the face of internal panic and external slaughter. Mongol governors, tolerant but absolute, are installed in Aachen, Vienna, Florence, and Toledo. By 1250, the map of Europe is unrecognizable. The entire continent, save perhaps the northern reaches of Scandinavia and the isolated kingdoms of Ireland and Scotland, is under the rule of the Mongol Empire. But conquest is only the beginning. Administration becomes key. The Mongols, who had no desire to impose their nomadic lifestyle on sedentary peoples, co-opt local administrators. Latin scribes become the eyes and ears of the khanates. European lords who pledge loyalty retain limited land rights under Mongol overlordship. Dissenters are swiftly removed. Religious tolerance is paradoxically enforced. Catholicism is allowed to persist, but its institutions are weakened. The Vatican is relocated to Kiev under Mongol watch. Monasteries pay tribute. Meanwhile, Buddhist temples, Nestorian churches, and Islamic mosques gain favor across Europe as the Mongols elevate their traditional policy of multi-faith tolerance to imperial doctrine. With the Silk Road now stretching from Lisbon to Beijing, the cultural exchange is explosive. Papermaking spreads like wildfire. Gunpowder, known but unused in Europe, becomes the core of Mongol-European warfare. The printing press arrives a century early. Chinese compass technology reinvents European navigation. Fashion, philosophy, and language blur. Aristocrats in Paris wear silk robes patterned in Tangut and Uyghur script. Universities begin teaching in a strange blend of Latin and classical Chinese. Arabic mathematics becomes mainstream. Medical texts from Persia and India transform European medicine. Even cuisine changes. Rice is cultivated in southern France. Tea becomes a staple in the Iberian Peninsula. Horse milk and fermented mare's milk, kumis, appear in northern taverns. Perhaps the greatest casualty of Mongol Europe is the centralized Catholic Church. Without a dominant Roman Church, Protestantism never emerges, because there's no monolithic authority to protest. Instead, a patchwork of syncretic faiths develop. One such movement, Tengrism Christi, blends Christian theology with Mongol shamanistic practices. Christ is still worshipped, but the crucifix is replaced with a celestial sun disk. Saints are revered alongside spirits of rivers and horses. The Reformation, as we know it, is replaced by a spiritual renaissance more akin to East Asian animism and philosophical inquiry. Without inquisitions or religious wars, Europe evolves into a spiritually pluralistic society, tolerant, but also lacking centralized ethical authority. By 1350, the Mongol Empire begins to splinter in our world. But in this alternate timeline, the European khanates thrive. Why? Because Europe's cities offer taxes, innovations, and trade that feed the empire's center rather than drain it. Florence becomes a hub of East-West art. Leonardo da Vinci is never born, but his predecessor, an Arabic-speaking Spanish philosopher named Zahir ibn Cordoba, invents flying machines based on both Mongol kites and Chinese aerodynamics. Architecture fuses Gothic cathedrals with the wide, symmetrical lines of Chinese palaces. Domed buildings stretch across Europe, tiled in Persian blue and Mongol green. Cities like Prague and Lyon become masterpieces of mixed aesthetics. Without the need to discover new continents, European expansion slows. The Americas are eventually reached, but by mixed fleets of Chinese, Arab, and Mongol-European ships. The first colonies are not Spanish, but joint ventures of the UN Western Trading Company. Indigenous civilizations in the Americas meet traders before they meet conquistadors. Cultural exchange occurs decades before conquest. Diseases still ravage the population, but there are efforts at integration rather than annihilation. Africa, likewise, experiences more trade than colonization. The Mali Empire flourishes. Timbuktu becomes a Mongol-influenced university town. The Swahili coast links directly to Baghdad and Marseille. The scientific revolution begins, not in London or Paris, but in Vienna, where Islamic, Buddhist, and Confucian scholars collaborate under Mongol patronage. The idea of rational harmony replaces the Enlightenment's antagonistic stance toward religion. Electricity is discovered in Cairo, steam engines in Hangzhou. Democracy as we know it doesn't exist. Instead, a system of meritocratic councils inspired by Confucian bureaucracy spreads worldwide. The word citizen holds less sway than learned official. Wars are fewer, but more catastrophic. When the Mongol-European Khanate collapses in the 1700s, it's not due to nationalism, but due to information overload, an empire too interconnected to function. Regional data councils replace the Khans. It's 2025 in this timeline. Europe is a patchwork of linguistic dialects, each one a fusion of Latin, Persian, and Mongolian. The primary lingua franca is Alta Latin, a bureaucratic tongue created to standardize trade and law. There are no nation-states in the traditional sense. Instead, semi-autonomous zones of learning dominate geopolitics, intellectual and economic coalitions bound by trade and shared history. The largest of these, the Cordoban Accord, stretches from Portugal to Kazakhstan. Religion is a private affair, often practiced through ancestor veneration, seasonal festivals, and personal shrines. Large-scale theism is rare. Technology is advanced but distributed. There are no Silicon Valleys, only networked centers of thought. AI is developed collaboratively. Warfare, while rare, still threatens global stability, but with drone horses and virtual battlefields. Education is the pillar of this world's stability. Most children grow up multilingual, with early immersion in multiple scripts: Latin, Arabic, Classical Chinese, and Mongolian. Curricula blend ethics from Confucius with logic from Aristotle and numeracy from Indian sages. Examinations are less about rote memorization and more about philosophical discourse and ethical dilemmas. Students are taught to harmonize perspectives rather than champion ideologies. Work is largely intellectual, creative, and decentralized. Instead of multinational corporations, the economy is structured around guilds of artisans, scholars, and engineers, each guild responsible not only for production, but for social well-being. Profit is communal. Innovation is rewarded, but secrecy is discouraged. Patent systems exist, but their role is to credit lineage of ideas rather than restrict access. Mass media takes the form of participatory discourse networks, where citizens upload, debate, and refine ideas continuously. Entertainment is culturally diverse. There are dramas set in alternate histories where the Mongols never invaded, satirical performances questioning the ethics of early Khans, and immersive simulations of lost empires like the Aztecs or Byzantines. Rather than a culture war between tradition and progress, there is a societal value placed on respectful contradiction. Global relations are managed by the Synod of Societies, a rotating council formed by representatives of different zones of learning. Its mission is to uphold balance, environmental, cultural, and intellectual. Nuclear weapons exist, but under a shared custodianship. Any breach of global protocol results in loss of representation rights at the Synod, a powerful form of soft power deterrence. Surveillance is omnipresent, but transparent. Every citizen can audit their own data trail, and surveillance agents must themselves be surveilled by public review panels. This creates a society where privacy is transformed, not eliminated, but ritualized. There are sacred zones of anonymity during religious festivals or scholarly retreats, which are socially protected and legally unbreachable. Space exploration has evolved more slowly, but more collectively. The first moon base is not national, but run by the Pan-Earth Research Circle, a coalition of thinkers and builders from Samarkand, Kyoto, Dakar, and Vancouver. Mars colonization is seen not as expansionism, but as stewardship. The Red Planet is a sanctuary for biological experimentation, ecological restoration, and poetic reflection. The economy is post-scarcity in the core zones, but on the fringes, inequality still persists. Tribal regions of Central Africa, parts of Siberia, and remote Pacific islands remain semi-autonomous and resist integration. But rather than being seen as backward, they are revered as cultural conservatories, places where alternative timelines of humanity are preserved in their own right. Perhaps most profoundly, the concept of identity is no longer national, ethnic, or even familial. It is vocational and philosophical. People introduce themselves by stating their lifelong project. I am a seeker of harmony between animal ethics and artificial intelligence, or I study the patterns of grief across cultural epochs. Names are transient, often changing with a person's stage of life. Even death has changed meaning. Burial is rare. Instead, lives are archived in narrative repositories, part library, part temple, part interactive story world, where descendants or curious strangers can experience a person's perspective, emotions, and decisions. Immortality, then, is not about physical survival, but about intellectual continuity. And so, the legacy of the Mongol conquest is not just territorial, it is civilizational. It demonstrates that from even the harshest beginnings, an empire of swords can become an ecology of minds. In this world, the spirit of Genghis Khan does not rest in mausoleums or war memorials, but in the conversations of children, the scrolls of philosophers, and the unbroken thread of shared memory stretching from the steppes to the stars.